Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Xaverian Masterminds. We wish to start with a short message from Reverend Father Dr. Dominic Savio, Principal of St. Xavier's College, Calcutta, and also the President of St. Xavier's College, Calcutta Alumni Association. Unfortunately, Father is at Sundarbans and with a very, very low network connectivity. So we tried getting him on the live session, but because of connectivity, he couldn't join in. So while our friends are joining in, may I request Nisha to please share the audio message of Father Dominic Savio, please.
Very good morning to all of you. Mr. Sanjay Goyal, the coordinator of the West Zone chapter of St. Xavier's College, Calcutta Alumni Association, all the respected members of the Alumni Association, and my dear friends. Wish you all a very happy New Year 2021. I assure you all, on behalf of all the fathers at St. Xavier's, our best wishes and prayers for your well-being. I am very happy to know that today West Zone chapter of St. Xavier's College, Calcutta Alumni Association begins a series of intellectual exchange, Xaverian Masterminds. The first chapter, the first webisode is organized today with the topic Decoding Budget 2021 with noted fund manager Xaverian Pankaj Dibriwal and professional tax consultant Xaverian Rajiv Bajoria, moderated by Xaverian Dr. Jalpis Mehta, senior banker and mentor, AIM, NIT, Ayog, Government of India. Surely that I am very, very happy to be part of this new venture, the intellectual exchange. And in a special way, I would like to congratulate Mr. Sanjay Goyal for taking this initiative to bring the Xaverians together. And surely this initiative will go a long way to bring the Xaverians together every month or once in 2 months or 3 months. It will bring us together as Xaverians to exchange our ideas and listen to one another. That way we can build a Xaverian family. That way I am very, very happy. I am very much part of this initiative today, and I wish you all the best. Surely soon we will meet in Mumbai once again to exchange our friendship. Wish you all the best. May God bless you.
Very, very warm thank you to Father. For most of us who are in Mumbai, we have not been able to physically meet Father Dominic Savio. So a quick introduction about him. Besides being the president of the Alumni Association and the principal of St. Xavier's College, Father has been quite active in the Jesuit circle and has represented India internationally too. He has done his schooling and education from Tamil Nadu, and his PhD is from Burdwan University. What makes Father quite close to the West Zone is that he spent a good amount of time in Pune. So typically the philosophy in De Nobile has been awarded from Janadi Pune, and that's how I'm told that Father is quite close to Mumbai and the West Zone per se. So he started teaching with the BBA department, Arts and Science and Commerce departments of St. Xavier's College way back in 2000. And he's also been the principal of the morning department, the Commerce department, where most of us come from. And today he's also the convener of the Calcutta Jesuit Province Education Commission. So that's about Father Dominic Savio. We wish that very soon we will be able to do an offline event in Mumbai, and we would be able to connect with him virtually, rather one-on-one. So moving ahead, friends, probably exactly this time last year, we had a physical meet around the same subject, and post that COVID struck. And today we are all virtually on this platform trying to connect with each other and trying to see how we can add values into our intellectual capital. So what we've done is we've launched this specific platform called Zaverian Masterminds. And there is a very, very serious thought behind it, because St. Xavier's College, Calcutta has a huge list of notable alumni. And if you look at even the current members in West Zone, most of us are having our own specialties and subject matter expertise. And the objective is that how we can add value to each other. So for guests who are on the webinar, I would like to mention that St. Xavier's College, Calcutta has been one of the leading institutions in India and has produced so-called notable alumni and names we can reckon with across all kind of subjects, all kind of areas. If you look at politics, we've got Siddharth Shankar Roy, we got Kamal Nath, we got Dinesh Trivedi, and we've got Hamid Ansari. These are the names who are something which everyone of us are aware of. We've got Acharya Jagdish Chandra Bose, if you want to talk to from a historic perspective. From the film industry, St. Xavier's has produced names like Satyajit Ray, Utpal Dutt, Bikram Ghosh, Prosenjit Chatterjee, and also the fashion icon Sabyasachi. From the sports area, St. Xavier's has proudly produced names like Saurav Ganguly, Leander Paes, and many. And of course, when we talk about St. Xavier's, commerce and industry and business is something which is absolutely synonymous to the brand St. Xavier's. And proudly, St. Xavier's has produced names like Aditya Vikram Bidla, Ellen Mittal, Mr. T. Gopalakrishnan, Arun Nanda, Mr. Sanjeev Goenka, Mr. Harsh Goenka, Harsh Neotia, and many more. And these are some of the names which all of us are aware of from the public domain. But there are so many other names amongst us, right in the West Zone and also various other zones of the alumni chapter, who are on their way to reckon the headlines of tomorrow. So the idea behind creating this mastermind series was to ensure that we get these kind of masterminds and brains on a platform so that they can share their intellect, share their knowledge, and also a perspective which all of us can probably take back with us. So today, when we begin this first episode of Zaverian Mastermind, I'm very, very proud to share that we have with us our very, very close friends and someone who does not require any kind of introduction. They are basically family. We had sessions of the gentlemen in the past also, and by a very, very strong public demand, it was unanimously decided that we have to begin these webisodes and the series of Zaverian Masterminds with none other than Pankaj Tibrewal and Rajiv Bajoria. So welcome Pankaj, welcome Rajiv. For the members on the group, am I audible? I'm getting some messages saying we can't hear. Nisha, if you could confirm that. Pankaj, Rajiv, can you confirm if you can hear me, please?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, Jalpesh, you're loud and clear, so we can hear you.
Sure, thank you. I got a few messages. So I'll introduce Pankaj and Rajiv, but before that, a very brief idea on the format. So of course, the subject of today's talk is decoding budget. But again, budget is something which is not so very recent activity which has happened. So of course, we'll take an opportunity to look at the budget, the impact of budget, but largely the focus would be on the economy, which all of us are interested to know, which all of us are stakeholders in a way. And of course, when we talk about equity, taxation also becomes a very important part. And as far as personal taxation, where I and you are able to save some money and plan ourselves and our finances well, is of course also a priority for us. Also a rule for all of us that we will have question and answer session, because that's quite important to understand and probably answer. So I would request all the guests to pose their questions either on the chat or at the end of the session. Raise your hands and I'll give opportunity to everyone to unmute themselves and also join in through a video so that you can ask your questions to the panelists. Also from Pankaj's side, specifically since he's he is our guru as far as equity is concerned. I'm sure most of us expects that we would probably get some tips or some names of the stocks. But let me clarify that at the beginning, that SEBI doesn't permit Pankaj to answer stock specific questions or questions which are very, very pointed. However, let me tell you guys that probably Zaverians are quite smart enough to read between the lines and take a view of what they want to hear out of Pankaj. So Pankaj, I thought I should give the disclaimer before we start with a round of introduction.
Thank you.
So coming to introducing Pankaj and Rajiv. See, Pankaj is a very, very well-known name in the mutual fund industry, in the equity markets. So Pankaj has a rich experience of almost 2 decades into the financial services markets. He has been managing schemes such as Kotak Emerging Equity, Kotak Small Cap, which was erstwhile Kotak Mid Cap, and also Kotak Equity Hybrid Fund, which was erstwhile the Kotak Balance Fund. So he's been with the Kotak AMC as the senior fund manager and senior executive vice president. And he's been very, very rightfully managing a large asset of USD 2 million. USD 2 billion kind of an asset is a very, very large asset as far as India as a market is concerned. So in his earlier stint at Principal Mutual Funds, Pankaj has managed schemes like Principal Emerging Blue Chip, Principal Tax Saver, and MIPs. All of us know, especially the Bombay Zaverian group here, that Pankaj has been featured in the top 10 fund managers in India for not just once, but 4 consecutive years, right from 2016 to 2019, as per Outlook Business. He's also featured in the top fund managers in Economic Times, Morningstar in 2016, 17, 19, and 20. Pankaj is a fund manager who's holding a master's in finance from Manchester University. And Pankaj, we are very, very proud to have you on this panel today and begin our series of Zaverian Masterminds with a session with you. Coming to Rajiv. So Rajiv Bajoria is a 1994 pass out Zaverian who's a senior tax consultant with one of the big fours in India. Rajiv has been specializing in tax for probably over more than 2 decades, which is something which is very, very look forward to as far as Zaverians are concerned. And Rajiv is a marathoner himself, and he's also on the board of India Business Advisory Forum, which is one of the partners in today's event. So welcome, Rajiv. So before I start this, let me also probably assure all the Zaverians on the panel that we want to make this mastermind series a very, very frequent opportunity for all of us to connect. And as we see Pankaj, Rajiv along with us, we feel that there are various areas, as we say, of life where we have Zaverians doing fantastically well, where they have done something very different. And we would invite Zaverians to come and share those thoughts with us quite regularly. So we could have a chef talking to us, we could have an actor, we could have a politician coming and talking to us about a perspective. And that's the rightful nihil ultra spirit, where we have people from diverse backgrounds doing fairly well and with an amazing knowledge to share. And I think we look forward to have this mastermind series quite frequently. So now coming to the subject of today, which is decoding budget 2021, and more so over decoding the economy and the future of economy. Let me begin by inviting Pankaj to share broadly his thought on the budget. I think budget is something which everyone is aware of, and we don't want to make this webinar too mundane, as I think our tagline which we launched said that this is not one of those run-of-the-mill webinars which most of the people are absolutely tired of attending. So Pankaj, from your perspective, if you can throw some light on how was the budget this year and what does it hold for all of us in future?
Thank you, Jalpesh Bhai, and a very good morning to all my fellow Zaverians. It's a great platform, and all kudos to Jalpesh Bhai for organizing this platform, and I think it can go a long way. I think Jalpesh Bhai and all the fellow Zaverians, I think market has given a thumbs up to the budget. It's been 20 days and market has gone just one way, and almost in this month, double-digit returns are already visible. So lesser said in the budget, but if I was to, in few lines summarize the budget, it's I think after a long time, it's a budget which has been transparent, It's a budget which is credible, and it's a budget which is growth oriented. And let me just dwell on each of these points in just a short period of time. Uh, in terms of transparency, every time a budget used to come, all the intellectuals, economists, financial participants used to criticize that there's a large component of off-balance sheet borrowing which is sitting outside the budget, outside the financials of the government of India. And the fiscal deficit which the government was reporting was actually much higher. For the first time, friends, the headline fiscal deficit looks higher, but the process started last year when the Annexure 5A was included in the budget, which said all the off-balance sheet borrowing which the government was doing through Food Corporation of India, NHI, and everything. This time, government decided to include the Food Corporation of India and other borrowings at the part of the fiscal deficit. So the headline fiscal of 9.8 looks higher, and next year 6.8 looks higher than the market expectation. But it's a more transparent number because it includes all the off-balance sheet items. The second is in terms of credibility. And I think the tax assumptions which the government is taking in its numbers is fairly credible. We always used to sweat by कि यार ये number सही नहीं है, ये tax assumption सही नहीं है, disinvestment का target सही नहीं है. But for the first time, उन्होंने बोला कि the whole of fiscal 21, which is the pandemic year, we will degrow our tax collection by -5%. And friends, we all know till the first 9 months, the tax collections are negative only 3%. So what the government is saying that the last quarter, which will be a bumper quarter in terms of tax collection, and we have seen GST and everything, that it will be a degrowth, which is unlikely in my view. And the next year also, when we look at the assumptions on the GDP growth, government is assuming 10% real GDP and 14% nominal. In my view, friends, this is extremely, extremely conservative number. And the numbers could actually surprise us on the upside. And hence the tax collection, which they are assuming next year is 16%, which will definitely have an upside because the first half was a washout in FY21. So when I look at the tax assumptions, the disinvestment and privatization target of 1,75,000, and if they do just one IPO of LIC of 1 lakh crore, take it from me that 1,70,75 won't be a large number. So the point which I'm trying to say is that credibility, where everybody doubted on the assumptions in the previous budget, was put to rest. So it's a transparency in the numbers, headline numbers, credible because the assumptions are very, very well known. And in terms of growth orientation, friends, it's a big, big move and a change in stance which the government is hinting us. For all the last 5-6 years, we all were, kind of worrying that where is growth gone into the economy? And why is government only focusing on laying down foundations, disruptions? And for the last 6 months after PLI was introduced in the economy, there's a clear change in stance that government's only next 4-5 years means growth. And friends, I think this is a major stance. This has been reiterated in the budget again. And when you look at the change in the expenditure, it's, diverted towards growth, which is capex linked. It is moving from, this year you had food subsidy to feed the poor. You had arrears of fertilizer subsidy, which were cleared down, in FY21. And next year, friends, not too many people have written about it, but 2.5 lakh crore, which was provided as subsidy this year, is moving down. And that 2.5 lakh crore is moving to productive capex. And hence, in my view, it was a growth orientation, which is the clear stance of the government. So I would say that the key message equity markets took were two. One, everybody was worried before going into the budget that there will be a COVID cess or a COVID tax, and there will be some tinkering on the tax structure. Nothing was done. The second, the clear message was we mean business, we mean growth orientation, and we want to bring back animal spirits into the economy. And time and again, if you look in the last 1 month, the Prime Minister, the different ministers and the government has been, for the first time, talking about wealth creators in the economy, talking about that you don't just need a socialist economy, but a combination of both capitalist and socialism together. So I think there's a big change in stance, and that's where market actually rejoiced that part and gave thumbs up to the entire budget.
So thanks, Pankaj. I think that's a fairly good perspective. But see, when we talk about the budget and we talk about the current situation, I think most of us have that in mind, that the futuristic plan looks quite good, and that's the reason probably market has responded. But when you look at the economy in reality, barring a few sectors like automobile, etc., and to an extent real estate, very off late, various sectors are still under the radar and facing a lot of challenge. So that's on one side you see economy still in stress, and on the other side you see the markets going up. So there is an anomaly in that kind of a phenomena. So what is your thought on that piece?
So Jalpesh bhai, I think I take pride in what as a country we have done in the last 12 months. And I feel that every country goes through a transformation every 20, 25 years. It gets an opportunity. As a vivid reader of history, if I go back into the past, after the Second World War, there were two countries who were devastated. One was Japan, one was Germany. And they went through a lot of stress. And after, huge effort, they pushed their automobile industry. And the next 15, 20 years, they became the superpowers in the world. Similarly, in the mid-80s, we and China were in the same status, both as a per capita and the economy size. Chinese went through a lot of stress, and we all know next 25 years what happened. I am extremely positive the way we have responded this time in the last 12 months. We have shown leadership. Leadership in the sense, for the first 2-3 months, majority of people were critical that why such a lockdown? The debate between livelihood and lives were being talked about. If you remember in April, May, June, right? And now on the hindsight, India has become a case study in the world that everybody, and I have attended many webinars globally, people are asking how did India control it? And with such a large population, just 1.5 lakh deaths or a crore of cases is just phenomenal. The second thing, we said that we will not give stimulus when economy is going through stress, people are not coming out. Everybody gave paychecks to the citizens. We again were criticized. And the government said that, please let the pandemic start getting over, then we will give the stimulus. And you have seen that in the last 4-5 months, the PLI schemes being introduced, the other thoughts of growth being talked about is a stimulus in its own self, and fiscal has actually expanded for the first time in many, many years in the government. So I think the way we are behaving this time, it's showing me signs that probably this is a new India, this is a new bold India. And Jalpesh bhai, don't forget, this is the largest fortress kind of a lockdown we have initiated. We have ran the largest food program of the world, feeding millions and millions of people. And whatever we are now doing will be the largest vaccination drive in the entire world. So I believe that the scale and scope which India was thinking has changed dramatically. And the way I look at economy at the ground level, Jalpesh bhai, I think a lot of things are changing and we need to take cognizance of that. Yes, there are few sectors which are still stressed, which is airline, retailing, hospitality, entertainment, but there are many good things which are happening in the economy. Agriculture for the third consecutive year has shown huge production growth. For the first time in 3-month lockdown, nobody died without food. This is a big achievement in a country which has 140 crore population almost, right? The second big thing is economy facing companies economy facing sectors are doing very well. Look at cement, look at steel. You talk to any cement company, any steel company, they are saying ki boss, maal nahi hai. Demand is so huge ki maal dene ko, productions are running at 80, 90, 100%. You talk about consumer durable sector, you talk about many other things. there has been an upsurge. Many critics will say it's a pent-up demand, sustain karega, nahi karega, kisi ko nahi pata. But my sense is there's a change in the way government is looking at things. And I would like to say that there are two things which are happening at the ground level. I think this entire Atmanirbhar, one should treat it as more, with a very different lens. A lot of sectors were dependent on China imports. And I think this PLI is a game changer, friends, in my view. The way government is talking about, say, just one sector I'll take is electronics. And we were worrying till 2-3 years back that electronics is the next oil for India. हम $50 billion का import कर रहे थे oil, electronics. And we were thinking कि ये जिस तरह 10-15% से बढ़ रहा है, it will become the next oil for us where we have to worry about. The way things have started spanning out, friends, I won't be surprised that in the next 5 years, India will produce 80 to 100 crore mobile handset only in India with a 30-35% value add, friends. The entire ecosystem is getting very nicely developed, and all the majors have started shifting or giving contracts to Indian manufacturers or global counterparts to set up their factory in India. And it is not far enough where every iPhone, every smartphone, rather than made in China, will be assembled in India. So I think it's a great move. I am speaking to the entire ecosystem, and slowly and gradually, the camera module guy, the motor, display, everybody will have an ecosystem in India. So think about it that after many years, the manufacturing sector, which was stagnant at $350-400 billion, is finally seeing the light of the day. And my sense is this is just the start. If we execute it well, friends, I think that India in the next 10 years will go through a golden era. And I am pretty positive and optimistic about it after a very, very long period. The second thing, friends, is don't believe me. I may sound a bit optimist, but there's a website called Invest India. It's a 5-year-old, kind of organization. It's a nodal agency for Government of India. It handholds any corporate who wants to set up a factory in India or an investment in India. You go to their website. It's a live online website, investindia.org. The number or the pipeline of FDI into the country was about $60 to $70 billion in the peak of pandemic, March, April. In the 9 months, friends, the pipeline has swelled to $174 billion. This is in the pandemic, huh? And the hatred against China is all well known. And a large number of corporations are planning to shift their supply chain either to Vietnam, Bangladesh, Thailand, or in India. And we have a huge opportunity. And this pipeline is not in air, friends. This is the pipeline where the corporate has taken their respective board approvals. They're either scouting for land, they're either scouting for approvals or whatever it may be. And this is a real pipeline which is there. And you can go sector by sector and see कि कहाँ पैसा आने का है India में. So my sense is that we have laid down the foundation very nicely. Economy, in my view, if execution goes well, and I use the word execution because we are very good at doing our self goal. India के अंदर सब कुछ अच्छा चलना होता है तो एक कोई ना कोई self goal हो जाता है. So we have to be aware of that part. But my sense is that the way things have started unfolding with the support of the government, I am seeing animal spirits coming back. And I am fairly optimistic that things would be much better on the economy side than what we have seen. I'm sure everybody is surprised looking at the way economy has responded post-pandemic. And I think money supply has been great. RBI has done a great job in maintaining liquidity into the country. So I believe that things are moving in. Later on, I'll touch on the earnings part, which is more real at some point of time.
Well, thanks, Pankaj. I think investindia.org is something which is brilliant. I think thanks for sharing that. All of us would look into it and probably see how we're getting investments away from China into India and what kind of sectors are coming in, because that itself would give us a great confidence. So when we talk about investing coming into India, so that's one way to boost the economy where we get FIIs and FDIs coming in India. The second point, which you also briefly touched upon, was making India Atmanirbhar. So that brings me to an area where an entrepreneur, it could be a small business, it could be an MSME, it could be a startup. How do you guys see India supporting such a kind of a business? And I think we'll come to Rajiv Bhai post that, because GST and taxation plays a very, very important role as far as these businesses are concerned. So Pankaj, first from your perspective, how do you see typically the small businesses, MSMEs and startups taking an advantage of this Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative?
So, Jalpesh bhai, I think the times are changing very fast, and every business in India has to adapt to the new changes very, very fast. When I look around, I think still the business on the smaller scale are not willing to change. Uh, that's my worry, if you ask me honestly. And the lockdown has taught us that digitalization is the important part. Still, many businesses don't want to use technology to grow, and they are very limited in their own periphery, which I think will be a deterrent for their growth at some point of time. Second, honestly speaking, आज भी, businesses don't want to pay tax. They want to, kind of do all the kinds of things which they want to, but gone are those times when you used to, do all kinds of things and probably not, kind of do that. So I think you have to be tax compliant. You have to make sure that this is a new India where you can't evade tax. This is an India where you need to make sure that you are tax compliant. So if SME makes those changes, and I think there are huge opportunities lying. Let me give you a small example. And for the benefit of all my fellow Zavarians, there is a cluster called Morbi in Gujarat. And friends, if you are not aware, Morbi now is the second largest cluster in the world for manufacturing of tiles, the floor tiles, wall tiles, and everything, right? There are about 700 to 800 units manufacturing tiles out there, owned by entrepreneurs, small guys, right? SME scale, maybe 5-10 crores kind of a turnover. Jalpesh bhai, you won't believe the kind of opportunity which has opened up in the last 6-8 months. It's phenomenal. We never used to export to US. Our market share was just 1% to export to US, and US is as large a market like India in tiles. And from China used to have 35% market share. 8 months back, US imposed anti-dumping duty on Chinese imports. And in 8 months, those Indian entrepreneurs, India from Morbi, have ramped up their market share from 1% to 9% as we speak. And, we used to do about 600 crores of export every month. That number today is 13 to 1400 crores of export every month. This year, Morbi itself will do 13 to 14,000 crore of export in a pandemic year. Can you believe that? And that is not an IT sector where Infosys, TCS, Wipro, all the top boys are there. It's a sector which is owned, operated by entrepreneurs of small and medium-sized scale. And they have been able to use this opportunity to make sure India becomes a large player in tiles export. And उनका लोगो क्या है? China से सस्ता, Italy से better. Because Italy is another hub of export of tiles. So I'm just trying to say that India has a large opportunity in the export market. And if we can kind of use that opportunity through this Atmanirbhar, I think we have to change and tweak a bit, but we can be great, story to talk about in the future.
I think fantastic example, Pankaj. That's something all of us should learn from, that how people in Morbi have taken advantage of a COVID kind of a crisis to turn the tables and make an opportunity of it. So I think Rajiv Bhai also would add, because he's also part of India Business Advisory Forum. That's a forum formed by the fellow Zavarians to advise small businesses. So we have also seen various businesses coming in and asking for advice to create opportunity out of the crisis. So of course, as you rightly said, there are those smart people there who know that this is an opportunity, rather than crying on the spilt milk or maybe looking at things in a bad perspective. So that brings me to Rajiv Bhai. Rajiv Bhai, I think Pankaj mentioned one thing which is a very, very hard fact in a country like India, that any promoter, be it a small guy or a large guy, would have an endeavor to save tax. I would say, politically correct, to save tax. That is changing, of course. But what is your perspective on that? Why is it that people are not happy paying taxes. Of course, there could be a reason that they don't get what is expected out of the government, and there could be a cultural issue. So how do you see this GST thing picking up from a business perspective, and as a tax consultant, what is your thought on the same?
See, the way I look at where the current government is in terms of the ability to track and collect information. So people may or may not be kind of attuned to paying taxes. There may be cultural issues, there may be whatever other issues. But I can assure you of one thing, days are counted. If people think they can get away with it, the government today is far better equipped on the technology side, on digitization side, than most of the large corporates. Forget about small and medium enterprises, and forget about the kind of entities which Pankaj rightly mentioned, who are still averse to digitizing things and who are staying away from transparency. And more because the more transparent you get, the bigger is the challenge in hiding things. But I can tell you from whatever we know of what the government is doing, the kind of data bank they are creating, and the kind of analytics and AI and machine learning that they are adopting, that there'll be no place to hide. Every data is getting cross-linked, and you will just have no place to hide. So it is only a matter of time, in the best interest of everybody, that they try to get compliant and start focusing on business rather than, to use your term, save taxes. Although there are terms which are, saving is not what we use for this. There's a slightly different term I would want to use, but fine. No. For whatever to do with the taxes, you better focus on your business. Tax is a consequence which will follow. So that is how you have to start viewing taxes, as a cost of business and not as a means or as an end to achieve your business goals. Your objective should be to make, to increase your turnover and increase your profits. Tax is a consequence which will follow. And if you start focusing on other things, then your business will suffer. Your percentage of tax may still be greater. So that is one thing. Just a couple of points on what Pankaj was mentioning, and I would want to share our experience on those issues, like Invest India that he was mentioning about. So whatever website they have, but they have industry-wise people allocated and appointed. So industry-wise and region-wise. So if you want to speak to a particular industry or particular region, there is, in that sense, a relationship manager marked. And if I want to do a call with, say, a foreign investor who may be looking at an FDI, or a group of investors or a group of people, if I'm wanting to speak to in any country, any region within that industry, I can reach out to Invest India. They will allocate somebody, whoever is appointed for that region or that industry. That person will come on those calls with me, do those pitches over there. So when you are speaking to some foreign investor, a potential investor, and the government representative is there, there can be nothing more credible. And that is as good a job as a private sector would do, and it is being driven in that manner. So Invest India as an initiative and the kind of results it is bearing, it is mind-boggling. And on the other side, as PLI that he was talking about, fine, there may be fine-tunings that need to be done, but on the electronic side, we have helped a couple of people who have come and set up large mobile factories, or the kind of interest that you see. It is again amazing. So I would agree with Pankaj on that count, that there are areas and there are measures being taken which will lead us into a very right direction. But as Pankaj said, self-goal. So I can already spot a big self-goal in the budget. And that is a real cause of worry when you talk to any foreign investor or anybody trying to do business with India. So when we come to the tax proposals, I'll talk about that. Of all the other small and big things, that is one big self-goal which we potentially see.
So Rajiv, if you want to still elaborate a little more on that, because in the second half, I want you to probably talk more on the personal taxation. So maybe this self goal is something which everyone is now quite inquisitive to know, and we don't want to leave you just with a bomb being dropped right now, and maybe you might forget that in the later half. So can you please elaborate further?
If I have to talk about one thing in the budget, that will be one thing that I need to talk about. So last budget meeting when we had, there was no mention of equalization levy because it was never there in the last budget. But somewhere between the last budget and by the time the Finance Act came in, which finally became an act while we were already in lockdown, this creature called equalization levy creeped into the Finance Act and became part of our lives in that sense. Now, at a very broad layman type, if I were to, explain what an equalization levy is and where the entire confusion arose, equalization levy has been there in India for a while. And it was there in some form where it didn't really impact many people. So people thought, ठीक है, equalization levy में कुछ किया वो अपने को लगता नहीं है तो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. So that was the impression. Then again, when larger discussions were happening, people said, fine, equalization levy is something more like a digital tax, which the OECD is looking at, which is more for market operators or for the Googles and the Facebooks and the Netflixes of the world or the Amazon and others. So any brick and mortar business or services will not be impacted. It is for online goods and services. Now, blame the Indian government, blame us as consultants. We started making representations after the budget came out. And we started saying the wordings are such that it could mean anything. So somewhere, since it was done in such a rush, the drafting was what it was, and it left many things open. And the number of representations we made, so I don't know whether that was the intent at an initial level, but the number of representations that were made by industry bodies and professional bodies kind of gave it a meaning which was so wide, I think the government was delighted. Perhaps they had never thought of it or intended to implement it in that manner. And what they did, they came back in this budget and gave a definition which was as wide. So today, effectively, if I were to say, they have said it applies to online goods or online trading or whatever. But the definition that they have given to online is mind-boggling. So just to set the context, definition is, it is for online sale of goods or online provision of services. Now, online sale of goods or online provision of services, as per the definition, would include any one or more of the following activities. Now, tell me if any trade of any scale or size can be done in today's date and time without any one or more of these activities being done online. So acceptance of offer for sale, placing of purchase order, acceptance of purchase order, payment of consideration or supply of goods or provision of services partly or wholly online. So any of these 5 activities, if it is done online, then it will be online sale of goods or online provision of services. And again, not getting into the nuances, there was something around royalty and FTS, which was taxed at 10%, which would be taxed over here. So they have said whatever is taxable at 10% will remain. So I'm not getting into those nitty-gritties of taxation. But at a mota level, if you look at it, what it means, every import of either goods or services will attract 2% equalization levy. Now, if you increase the cost in everything, and especially commodities, by 2%, it is not going to remain affordable. And at the end of the day, the foreign entity, again, how does the levy apply? It is to be paid by the exporter. So the foreign entity, which is rendering services or exporting goods into India, has to separately file a return in India and pay this 2% tax. So you expect them to do a compliance. So that doesn't make India a very attractive destination from that perspective. And on the one hand, we are talking about PLI. And as Pankaj also rightly said, at best, we are looking at 30-35% value addition. Means what? You still will have 60-70% of import. And that import will be again added by this 2% duty, which is neither offsetable. It's not a custom duty where it will be an input duty and you will get it as an against your output duty. It is not a tax which you can get a set off against your taxes in the home country. It is over and above everything. And the government has also said that if the foreign entity is not complying, then the buyer can be treated as a representative assessee and he would be asked to comply. So that only means that every buyer today maybe will have to then add that 2%, do that compliance, and the definitions are so wide, which I just broadly explained. So this is going to be a major dampener, and frankly, a lot of representations are still happening. But am I really hopeful of it? Perhaps no, because all these representations were made, and instead of clarifying and giving it in a better shape, they made it worse by putting it as a clarification in the budget. So this could potentially be one of the biggest self goals we do, because that only reflects that state of arrogance which the government, time and again displays. So that is one of the larger concerns I would have. But yeah, we can get into the other provisions and other things later.
Sure. So thanks, Rajiv, I think, for bringing in this perspective, because that makes our discussion more homogeneous rather than having only optimistic or only pessimistic view. So I think, yeah, that's something which we all need to ponder upon. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have covered the macro piece so far in the last half an hour. And I think going forward, what we look forward from Pankaj and Rajiv is more to do with what are the markets going forward, which are the key sectors we as investors should look forward to, and why. Of course, let's not get into which stock in which company, though you can ask at the end of the session specific to sectors, any questions you might have. And I think one interesting thing which we discussed with Pankaj is that what are the 5 mistakes you should not do in the market. So I think that's something which I'm quite looking forward to, Pankaj. I think what not to do is something which all of us probably would learn rather than what to do, because everyone talks about what to do, where to invest, how to go about it. I think we look forward to hear from you what not to do. Probably that will leave us with some takeaways. And from Rajiv Bhai, from personal taxation perspective, where do we see this year, and probably what needs to be done ahead? Because St. Xavier's group is not just a alma mater, it's also a think tank, and we've in the past also been an industry body to represent various policy suggestions to the government. So I think we'll eagerly look forward to listen to you on that front. So I'll take a very short pause here because it's quite important to thank a few collaborators. And as we say today, it's a time where people have to collaborate, because collaboration is the key, be it business, be it an event like this. So today, besides the West Zone, we had all the chapters of St. Xavier's College Alumni Association, right from the Calcutta chapter, the Bengaluru, Delhi chapter, and also international chapters in the US, UK, Singapore, and Bangkok. Bangkok, I was not aware that we do have a chapter there, have collaborated so that we have such a fantastic audience today. So thanks so much to all the chapter heads. Also, we had Navi Mumbai Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Business, who has partnered with us. So our chapter head, Sanjay Goel, is a part of the chamber there. So thanks, Navi Mumbai Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Business. Of course, we have Ashika Capital, that's also a Xaverian promoted entity. And we have Mihir Mehta, our co-host, who's helped us host this event. So thank you, Mihir. And we have India Business Advisory Forum. That's a few of our Xaverian friends who are founders of that. Myself, Rajiv, and Parimal are a few to name. So before we move into the next session, which is very, very interesting, and I think having a lot of takeaways, May I request Mihir from Ashika Capital to probably share a few words on what you guys are doing and maybe enlighten the Zaverians on that front, please.
He has not been able to connect back, I think.
Okay, no worries. So in the meanwhile, till Mihir joins in, I would invite Mr. Parimal Seth. Parimal ji is 1982 pass out, and he is also one of the core members of India Business Advisory Forum. And before I call upon Parimal Bhai, I would quickly share a 1-minute video with all of you, just to give you a perspective of what IBAF is all about and how Zaverians are trying to do something different here. So just give me a minute till I share that with you, please. May I invite Parimal Seth. Parimal Bhai is 1982 pass out Zaverian, and he himself is a value investor. He's an angel investor himself. Parimal Bhai is the director with Kenis Global Solutions LLP, and being an investment banker for 27 years, having raised private equity debt capital and also handled corporate advisory in mergers and acquisitions in the SME and startup space. He's a CA by profession and also one of the core members of India Business Advisory Forum. So Parimal Bhai, may I request you to join in for a minute and share with all the fellow Zaverians and our guests today what IBF is all about. Nisha, you will have to probably unmute.
Yeah, he's a panelist.
No, he's not a panelist. We have to add him.
Yes. Mr. Parimal Seth, right?
Yeah, I'm allowing him to talk. Yeah. Parimal Bhai, you will have to unmute yourself and unmute your video as well.
I have unmuted myself, but
your video is not visible. Nisha, any guidance how to?
I think if you can, yeah, just because I think you whether it has to be done at your end.
Just a second. Give us a
minute. It is
minute.
on. Okay, just give me 1 moment. You can check.
Yeah, so some challenges with the virtual mode, guys. Please bear with us. Virtual mode is quite easy, but sometimes it also creates some challenges like these.
Okay. Parimal ji is there in panelists.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, we can see you. We can see you now. Yes, Parimal Bhai.
Yeah, thank you, Jalpesh, and for inviting me in this webinar and introducing IBAF. IBAF is basically India Business Advisory Forum, a think tank forum for startups and SMEs and MSMEs. It's a consortium of industry experts and subject matter experts who have come together with a common objective of helping Indian businesses and entrepreneurs grow. So we are a team of experts from the diverse field, whether it is marketing and branding, whether it is digital and media, whether it is finance, legal, business growth strategist, and even we have some life coaches as our experts. Each of the experts are having a deep experience in their respective fields and also having a strong network created over the years, which could benefit a lot of businesses. So our focus have been primarily helping entrepreneurs to the next level of growth. It can be a business ideation, it can be a validation of an idea, it can be launching of a product or services, or turning around a business, or any business requiring finance, or expanding business across geographies and channels. Some businesses are facing problems in terms of profitability, in terms of cutting costs. So we are there to help those businesses with our think tank forum. Having said that, IBF is a dedicated chapter for entrepreneur and business advisory under Empower Foundation, which is registered with a Niti Aayog, Government of India. Our model has been quite simple. We help businesses first understand the growing needs of each businesses, the changing market dynamics, and the problem areas and the opportunities. Depending upon the same, we allocate a mentor or a team of mentors who are experts in the field and believe in making an impact. These mentors will formulate strategies and come out with certain solutions in consultation with the entrepreneurs or the businesses. We will walk along with them till the objective is achieved. And in short, we will work with them, with the entrepreneurs and the businesses from conception to completion till that objective is achieved. In fact, we have already onboarded many SMEs and MSMEs and many Zavarians, be it from the industry or be it from CA fraternity, are part of this initiative. This is an initiative which is also a part of government body who is interested to take the MSMEs and SMEs into the next level of growth. And we have been part of this government initiative to be in this, to launch this forum. Having said that, I think I've spoken much about IBF. I think over to Jalpesh, and sure, thanks for giving me this opportunity. Yeah.
Thanks, Parimal Bhai. I think it's a very, very deep pleasure working closely with Zavarians like you, Rajiv Bhai. And I think that's the true spirit of Neil Ultra, that how our intellect or our network could benefit others. So on that note, let me invite Mihir from Ashika Group to quickly share a minute of thought on this, and then we'll proceed to the second part of the session, please.
Hi everyone. I won't take more than 30 seconds. First off, apologies. I dropped out a little bit. I was in transit. But thank you so much, Jalpesh Bhai, Pankaj Bhai, Rajiv Bhai, for doing this. And just to give you a quick rundown, we are an integrated financial services firm with presence across businesses like stockbroking, lending, investment banking, and so on and so forth. And I just wanted to take this opportunity for 10 seconds to introduce something that I've been personally working on, and something that we've done is, as with most of the financial services players, we've now come out, and coming from a legacy background, we've now come out with a novel mobile trading application called Dhanush. And that's a big win for us personally, because what we've done is that moved our entire retail investor base to Dhanush, and I hope and I'll be definitely being in touch with most of the Zavarians to gather their feedback and what they feel about that. So that's just a tidbit from me. But thank you so much for doing this, and see you guys soon.
Thanks, Mihir. Thanks so much. That was pretty as short as you committed. Good to connect, and thanks once again to Ashika Capital for providing us this platform. So now moving to the second phase, which is quite an important phase for today's session, and which everyone wants to know as retail investors from Pankaj. But Pankaj, what are the key themes in the next 3 to 5 years all of us should look at? And maybe you can just run us through some thoughts and innovative ideas on the same, please.
Great. So from a theme and a sector perspective, there are few important ones which I think are there. So let's touch some of them. So the first one I think is the entire real estate and the home improvement. Friends, I think after maybe 7-8 years, the residential real estate sector has started to look up. And our thought has been that the affordability is the best in the last 20 years. जो mortgage rates हैं 6.5-7 पर, property prices have stagnated over the last 6-7 years. I think incrementally, I think post COVID, हर जन को घर का वैल्यू पता चल गया है. मतलब पहले तो अपने रात में आते सोते थे, खाते थे, चले जाते थे, but I think after a long time we all have realized the value of home. That schooling, office, everything probably is now a new reality. And I think that is giving a push overall to the real estate sector. And this elephant, in my view, after 6-7 years seems to be waking up. And if real estate starts doing well, I am pretty positive that the 200 industries associated with real estate, whether it be pipe, paints, plywood, consumer durable, everything which goes inside the house, I think we'll see growth momentum coming back. So this entire home improvement and real estate seems to be a next 3-5 year theme. And after a long time, you are seeing that the disruptions, RERA and all that have laid the foundation. And friends, consolidation has happened in this sector. Just to give you an example, top 7-8 cities used to have in the peak 2,800 builders. And that number is now post-RERA down to 1,100 builders. And in every city, the incremental market share of 60-70% is taken by the top 20-30 builders of that city. So my sense is that this sector is looking for an upswing, both supported by macro tailwinds and the affordability part which is there. So that's one thing which one should keep in mind. In our portfolios, I am more inclined towards home improvement rather than pure real estate plays, because वहाँ पर brand है, अच्छे brands हैं, अच्छी कंपनियां हैं, बैलेंस शीट, कैश फ्लोज ऑल आर गुड. रियल एस्टेट में एक ही प्रॉब्लम है कि रिटर्न ऑन कैपिटल नहीं बनता कोई भी रियल एस्टेट वालों का, तो उनका काफी पैसा लैंड बैंक में अटका रहता है. सो एज अ फिलॉसफी आई ऑलवेज बिलीव दैट home improvement is a better space if you want to ride the entire real estate sector. The second thing, friends, I spoke about in brief, and I am pretty positive that India will see cluster developing across major industries. Government has already announced 13 industries in PLI. 2-3 के detail आ गए हैं, बाकी के 9-10 के detail as we move forward will come. And you will see new generation entrepreneurs getting created. Friends, 90s में you saw the IT industry getting created, which became a $150-200 billion industry. Pharma industry got created. Now is the time probably you will see maybe electronics में से 4-5 player निकलेंगे, maybe API में से 4-5 player निकलेंगे, furniture में से निकलेंगे, auto ancillary में से निकलेंगे, which will be both local and global champions. Let me give you an example on the opportunity. We all have seen the largest program of LED lights in the country, right? Now, कोई के घर में भी I would doubt कि CFL लगता हो. Now, entire households in India, even in the smallest towns and villages, have moved to LED light. It's still a 4,500-5,000 crore industry in India. But globally, that industry is now a $8 billion industry. Okay, and we were never competitive with China because हमारा cost differential 5-10% का रहता था. With this PLI being now introduced in lighting, the details are not out yet. I think many manufacturers will not only become local but global champions. और आप सोच सकते हो, आप 4,500-5 हजार करोड़ के मार्केट हो और आपके पास $8 बिलियन का मार्केट पड़ा है जो आपके लिए ओपन है. So my sense is that you will see a lot of companies becoming champions in ACs, becoming champion in lighting, becoming champions in furniture, and some of the other things like tiles I spoke to. You never thought that this will be a great opportunity. So I think the entire PLI Atmanirbhar will lead to manufacturing, and I am quite positive that over the next 3-5 years, manufacturing as a theme will be a very powerful theme in India to ride on. And the way we are, positioned in the portfolios is right the consumables. जो manufacturing में रोज जाए, चाहे वो abrasives हो, चाहे वो bearings हो, चाहे जो भी consumable आपको रोज manufacturing में चाहिए, that will be a very important thing to ride on. The third thing, friends, is big getting bigger. And I think we have seen consolidation in every sector, that the top 4-5 guys, and the top 4-5 guys doesn't mean only large cap. ये एक myth है कि जो मतलब large है मतलब वो large cap हो गया. नहीं, कई sectors में हम देख रहे हैं कि mid and small cap वो तो SEBI definition है market cap का, लेकिन जो large कंपनियां हैं उसको classified mid and small cap कर रहे हैं, but they are growing at a faster pace. For example, in cement we have seen consolidation. The top 5 guys are 60-70% of incremental market share. Banking and financial services में हम देख रहे हैं that the top private guys are gaining 60-70% incremental market share. So every sector, I think the top 5-6 guys will gain at the benefit of the tail of the people who are unorganized. And in my view, that's again a very powerful theme which we see. And last 2 quarters में आपने देखा कि pandemic के बाद how corporate India has performed. Hats off to them. They focused on cost, they focused on entire rejig of their operation, they focused on productivity, and how Indian corporates have come out. And friends, I don't know how many of you know, every country in the world has seen earnings upgrade, but India has seen the maximum earnings upgrade because the entrepreneurship out here is unable to match. No country can match the Indian entrepreneurship. I can write it on paper. Last 3-4 साल में हमने अपना मौजू खोया था, but जब गाड़ी रुक गई ना और कोई के पास कैश फ्लो नहीं, फैक्ट्रियां बंद हो गई थी, हर एंटरप्रेन्योर looked inward and reinvented themselves. And I think that's the return back of Indian corporates. This is the highest earning growth ever in a decade, and that is coming in the 3rd quarter of a pandemic. Can you believe it? That India overall corporate basket delivered 30% earnings growth. Nifty basket delivered 22-23% earnings growth. तो जो चीज के लिए हम वेट कर रहे थे वो हो रहा है, and the larger listed companies are gaining market share definitely. So big is getting bigger. That's the 3rd important important thing. And 4th is in the financial services, friends. And I think we are a growth-oriented economy. Lending part sabko pata hai, but I think the non-lending part will become a very important portion, which will be wealth management, insurance, mutual fund distribution space, mutual fund asset management companies. So I think that non-lending space also look very, very attractive from a decade perspective. Last but not the least, I think digitalization is an important theme, and every business has to adopt that in their growth path now. But apart from that, and I think as a fund manager, we need to be, very, very clear that the world is changing at a fast pace, and we can't be rigid in our thoughts. Let me give you a couple of examples, and you will see that the madness is going around the world. There's a company which got listed in Korea just 2 weeks, 3 weeks back. It's something like a TikTok, which allows you to make short videos and upload it on your mobile. And that got listed at $50 billion market cap. It loses $1.2 or $1.5 billion a year. It makes losses. In 4 weeks, the market cap is now $250 billion. Yes, friends, you heard it right. It's $250 billion, more than the largest market cap of any listed company in India, or maybe slightly lower than the largest listed market cap in India. There's another company in China, got listed in US. Existence was not there in 2016. The company's market cap is $240 billion, makes $1.5 billion loss. And I can go on and on that what is happening in the entire internet space globally. And people have learned, get the consumers on board first, revenues and profits will follow later. Yes, it's a risky model. We have never been used to that, valuing that model in India. But my own humble summation is that over the next 3-5 years, you will have these large private companies listed in India again, which we are using on a daily basis for our food delivery, for our education, for our insurance purchases, whatever it may be. आज हमारे पास option नहीं है उनको invest करने का, but at some point of time in the future, these companies will be listed, and we need to be agile, nimble enough, and open enough to make sure that we also write these platforms. And these will be available to public investors, in my sense, in next 3 to 5 years. So digitalization is another very, very important theme. Today, we are writing it through IT services, but at some point of time, we'll get the consumer platforms also being listed and available to us as a public investors. So these are the 5 powerful themes in my view. And obviously, then we can tweak upon which are the great companies in those sectors to write upon. But I think broadly, I have covered the main themes, which I think are powerful themes going forward in the next 3-5 years.
No, thanks, Pankaj. I think I resonate very, very strongly with the last theme which you mentioned, the digitization, because we have seen various investors when we are advising startups who are coming and telling us that they have a huge amount of capital and they don't have investment avenues. Because if they invest in their local markets, the local markets are not that great. The return on their equity is not that great. But despite a good failure rate of 90%, they look at a very, very futuristic way of making a huge money. Only thing they look in is that the model has to have a huge scalability and they should have a huge consumer base. I think data is something which they are also very, very secretively looking at a big play in time to come. And as you rightly mentioned, there are so many startups coming in today, and I'm sure 10% of them also would become like Amazons and Flipkarts and those companies which you mentioned in Korea and China. So even Big Basket, for example, in COVID did a phenomenal business. They doubled their entire business. Probably what Big Bazaar or Tata guys with a deeper pockets could not do is something which these guys did. Again, they had huge losses, but doesn't matter. They are slated for a bright, bright future. So that's also changing the whole dynamics of way digitization is creating new mammoths in times to come. And also the real estate sector, which you mentioned, that very, very strongly I agree with you that now all of us understand the value of homes. Being at home for last 9 months, people have realized that the home is either smaller or I need one more room or maybe the play area is not that great. So I think residential sector is definitely poised to grow. As a banker, I can tell you, we all banks across board, PSU, private banks, are having phenomenal home loan business in the last few years, which we've seen. Month-on-month business is so much that people are not able to handle it. That's the kind of residential demand has come up. So I think, yes, you've given us great themes, and I think we'll ask you further questions from the members in a while. Coming to Rajiv Bhai, something on the individuals. When we talk about investment, of course, tax also comes into play. And this budget, we didn't get something great to celebrate. But what do you see the government's perspective and going ahead? How do you see personal taxation shaping up and how do we investors benefit out of it?
Jalpesh, first of all, you are a greedy man. Because everybody was talking of a COVID cess for fortunate people like you who have that income level where it could be imposed. But we didn't have any of those. So that was a big plus, I would say. But that said, there are a couple of things which is there again for larger income groups. So the EPF contribution that happens. So any contribution now which is exceeding 2.5 lakhs will be taxed. So the entire mechanism, modalities will have to be seen, whether they create parallel accounts, whether how do they monitor it, whether the interest which gets credited will a tax deduction happen year on year or will it be at the time of withdrawal. So details are not out. But directionally, it is very clear that any EPF contribution exceeding 2.5 lakhs, and that approximately comes to about 50 lakh per annum of salary. So that level and beyond, EPF will be taxable. Similarly, any policies of ULIP, which to my mind, and many may differ, which was never an insurance policy. It was an investment policy garbed as insurance, and it was a backdoor entry trying to sell mutual funds. So that has been plugged, and any ULIP policy issued post 1st February, the cumulative premium for that, if it exceeds again 2.5 lakhs, then there will be an implication in the sense of that will become taxable. So the insurance broker or your relationship manager cannot pitch, आप सर म्यूचुअल फंड में डालोगे तो उसमें तो आपको 10% टैक्स लगेगा, ये हमारा लो ये 1010D में exempt है. That is no longer going to be exempt. So those are two areas of investment or otherwise which one may have to now look at and look at other investment avenues where you will any which ways have to pay tax. So those advantages which you had with these two investment avenues will be gone, and you will have to evaluate them purely on merits. So and apart from that, there haven't been any major changes on the personal tax front. And of course, which is in a way good news, because the COVID cess was a there was a huge overhang of COVID cess going into the budget. So that is so far as personal taxation is concerned. I can touch upon the other corporate tax parts later.
No, sure, Rajiv bhai. So कुछ ज़्यादा नहीं मिला तो उसकी खुशी उसमें मनाते हैं कि कुछ चला नहीं गया. So I think that's how we will have to live with it this year as individual investors or salaried and self-employed guys. So coming to Pankaj,
I'll just add one more thing.
Yeah, Rajiv bhai, please go on.
आगे भी कुछ नहीं मिलेगा ये मान के चलो.
Great. Of course, I think that's the way. कुछ नहीं मिलेगा मान के चलो, कुछ मिल गया तो the joy of getting it will be probably 10x. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So coming to Pankaj, something which is very different, because we all have seen a lot of webinars in the past. Typically, the COVID times have thrown us on our faces. A lot of webinars, a lot of guys have spoken. Most of the guys, we have heard them speak about what to do or where to invest, what sectors to look at. No one has told us what not to do, and that's a very, very interesting thing actually. क्योंकि अगर ये पता चल जाए ना कि क्या नहीं करना है, तो उसमें आधी जिंदगी बच जाती है इंसान की. So maybe may I request you to tell us कि अगर अपना पैसा लगाना है 100 रुपए और उसको जीरो करना है तो कैसे कर सकते हैं? That is one way to look at it. या क्या गलतियां नहीं करनी चाहिए? Probably that is something we will all take back as a rule back home.
A very interesting question, Jalpesh bhai. Hopefully, we never endeavor to lose money. But, this brings me to my favorite book. And the book's name is All I Want to Know Where I'm Going to Die, So I Will Never Go There. All I want to know where I'm going to die, so I will never go there. And I think it's a Bible for anybody interested in investment world. And it talks about the theory of inversion. Theory of inversion means what all you should not do in your investment career or your investment journey, which will make sure that you don't lose your capital, and all of us, focus on the next 200, 300% return and focus how we can make money in the next 2-3 years or make 200, 300% in a very short period of time. But if we focus that how we can't lose money over a medium to long term, trust me, during that period, you will find the biggest of the multi-baggers. And I think it's very important to know what all things you should not do in your theory of inversion, which will make sure you make less mistakes. And investment, to be honest with you, is all about doing lesser and lesser mistakes over a period of time and hitting a strike rate, which is much larger and bigger. So let's look at 3 or 4 points, which at least in my investment journey, I have learned, and I'm still a student of the market, and we all keep learning every day. First, I think business is all about return on capital. अगर आप 100 रुपया इन्वेस्ट करते हो बिजनेस में, उसमें कितना रिटर्न सस्टेनेबली जनरेट हो सकता है ओवर लॉन्गर पीरियड्स ऑफ टाइम. एंड बिजनेस विच जनरेट्स रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी और रिटर्न ऑन कैपिटल एम्प्लॉयड विच इज हायर देन कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी. जैसे अपने इंडिया में आप 10-11% तो कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी लेके चलोगे कि उतना पैसे का वैल्यू है, और अगर आप 15-20% या उसके ऊपर आप सस्टेनेबली आप रिटर्न जनरेट करते रहो अपने बिजनेस में, इसका मतलब आपके बिजनेस में कोई ना कोई स्ट्रॉन्ग मोट है, कॉम्पिटिटिव एज है, जो कंपटीशन आपसे नहीं ले सकता है. वो नेटवर्किंग इफेक्ट हो सकता है, टेक्नोलॉजिकल एडवांटेज हो सकता है, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन हो सकता है, या प्रोडक्ट हो सकती है, कोई भी चीज हो सकता है. एंड आई थिंक दैट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू इन्वेस्ट इन बिजनेसेस which sustainably over longer periods of time can generate return on equity and return on capital higher than cost of equity. If you look at companies which have destroyed wealth or destructed wealth, are companies which have generated lower cost of equity or lower return on capital employed compared to cost of equity, and they try to grow, and that growth become toxic then. मतलब वो growth destruction कर देती है. आप 8% रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी जनरेट कर रहे हो, आप 20% से ग्रोथ करना चाहते हो, तो 8 और 20 का जो गैप है उसको आपको रेगुलर या तो बैलेंस शीट को डाइल्यूट करना पड़ेगा, या आपको इक्विटी कैपिटल रेज करना पड़ेगा, या डेट लेना पड़ेगा टू फंड दैट ग्रोथ which returns are not being able to generate from your own business. So it's very important to know that. And in this process, you will find 100 baggers, where you find a business which is generating sustainable return on capital for longer periods. And this is the most important thing which people don't give credence. But I have learned over the last 2 decades, this is one of the most important thing which you should focus on. The second part is friends, focusing more on cash flow rather than P&L. And I think cash flow and balance sheet don't lie, but P&L can lie for a long period of time. And there I say that top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity, and cash in bank is reality. वो कंपनी को मत चेस करो जो खाली टॉप लाइन ग्रो कर रही है, जो प्रॉफिट में कन्वर्ट नहीं हो रही है, और वो प्रॉफिट का भी कोई मतलब नहीं जो अकाउंटिंग प्रॉफिट है जो कैश फ्लो में कन्वर्ट नहीं हो रही है. So top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity, but cash in bank is reality. And I have avoided big mistakes in my life, in my investment journey. I have made many, but बड़े वाले mistakes अभी भी avoid हुए हैं क्योंकि focus on cash flow has been there rather than only top line and accounting profits. That's the second one. The third one, friends, is I think we all are not going to run the business. और हमारा business बहुत simple है. हमें दूसरों की शादी में जाके डांस करना है. बट ये श्योर करना है कि कोई गलत शादी में जाके गलत खाना नहीं खा ले और तो वो डांस किया हुआ महंगा पड़ेगा. सो द पॉइंट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज दैट वी शुड बी वेरी केयरफुल इन सिलेक्टिंग मैनेजमेंट टीम्स बिकॉज वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू रन द कंपनी. द इंटेग्रिटी ऑफ मैनेजमेंट इन द पास्ट इज ऑलवेज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू नो दैट हाउ दे हैव रिवॉर्डेड माइनॉरिटी शेयर होल्डर्स ओवर लॉन्गर पीरियड्स ऑफ टाइम. एंड आई थिंक if we can get the right management teams who will execute the business, you have got a 100 bagger in your hand. And I always say that at least my style is I like owner operated driven business model. Jahan skin in the game ho. And globally, if there have been a lot of academic research being done, papers being published, which shows that where there is a owner operator driven business model, there's a high skin in the game, they tend to do far better than the agent operated driven business model. I'm not saying they are bad, but agar aap index plot karo, that index by far margin outperforms over 10, 15, 20 years the agent operated business model. So I think I have a great fan that great entrepreneurs, great business people can develop good business, but one has to be selective enough to identify the right businesses in that aspect. The fourth and the most important point, that this is not an intellectual journey. I believe that rather than IQ, EQ is the most important. And we all get confused कि अपना intelligence ज़्यादा लगाए, but emotion quotient को अगर आपने control, temperament को control करें, and cutting the noise out in this digitalized world is the most important thing in our investment journey. And over a period of time, in the last 8 months, we have seen March में सबको बेचना था, आज सबको लेना है. But if you would have invested in March, for example, you would be sitting on maybe 80-100% gain. But you needed that temperament, you needed that insights and belief. So it's very important that you ride that emotional journey. No company will go in a straight line. You take it from me. The best of the companies globally who have created $1 trillion market cap, they have gone through phases of 60, 70, 80% drawdown. It's not a recommendation, but look at Amazon. Listed in 95. In 2000-2001 dot-com crash, it had a 90% drawdown. 90% drawdown. So in case you got jittered, you lost the biggest winner of the next 20 years or 25 years. And that's in front of us, that every company will go through the zigzags, will go through corrections and drawdown. And it's very important to have that emotional and the temperament part right inside you if you want to become a great investor. So I think 5-6 things which are very, very important on both qualitative and quantitative front. And my sense is if you can avoid making mistakes on that, you probably have a multi-bagger in your hand from a longer term perspective. And these are the things which I look at. I again repeat, return on capital, return on equity, very important. You should go into the details why the company is generating or why the company can't generate. Second, cash flow, balance sheet more important than P&L. Third, management integrity, management quality most important. And fourth is the connect between emotion and intelligence. And I think temperament control is more important than IQ. So these are the 4-5 parts. If you can do it well, I think you will make less mistakes. You will be there on the pitch for a longer period. And we have seen Pujara and Rishabh Pant in Australia. If you are there on the pitch, you will make runs, and runs will tickle. So it's very important to stay in the markets for longer term rather than being there for a short term. I hope I am able to answer.
No, superb, actually. Very, very crisply, you put it across very, very important points. I think all of us will take back amazing learning here. I think for me personally, that was a fantastic one, which is top line is vanity, bottom line is sanity, and cash flow is the reality. I think I personally would take it very, very strongly as far as investing is concerned. And of course, all the other points, EQ versus IQ. So guys, I think what we will do is we will begin question and answer sessions. You have an option of posting your questions. I can see some of them in the Q&A mode at the bottom bar. And also you can choose to raise your hand so that we can give you an access so that you can come up live with your video and audio mode on and ask a question. So I'll take a couple of them which are already shared. So I think Shashi has asked this question. Maybe Rajiv Bhai, you can take it up because you have been advising MSMEs through IBAF. So Shashi says that many of MSMEs have suffered working capital impact, which continues in post-COVID world. Are there any avenues for unsecured financing which have opened up? CGTMSE scheme is not faring well as per conversation with bankers. So if you could throw some light here, what are the avenues for MSMEs as far as unsecured financing is concerned? And of course, Pankaj, you can also chip in here.
In unsecured financing, I would say it all depends on the business model. You could get in some risk capital into it because unsecured financing is going to be a risky affair. So the credentials, the background and everything else would be looked at. And you could, depending on your growth potential, you could get a PE kind of an investor or somebody else. So a lot will depend. In fact, just drawing from what Pankaj just said, so a lot will depend on what is your ability to return, generate the returns, your ability to generate cash flows. So because secured or unsecured, once you take a loan, the lender would look at your ability to repay. And your ability to repay will be a combination of the factors Pankaj just mentioned, whether you can generate enough cash flows, first of all, to repay, because even profits don't repay loans, only cash flow does. And the integrity and other aspects obviously would matter. So if the business has the potential, I think marrying the investor and the business is not going to be a big challenge. And we have people like Parimal Bhai who is even himself a value investor and does do these kind of investments. And Pankaj, if you have anything, or even Jalpesh, being a banker, you would be more exposed to these areas.
Correct. No, so see, actually, there's a huge amount of awareness issue, which we are also trying to address through this platform of IBAF, where typically we have seen MSMEs going to the normal bankers, which are typically the street side PSU bank, where they have been historically banking with, and they have a very, very basic collateral. So, of course, there are various entities like SIDBI. There are a lot of the debt funds which have come in play, who see a lot of value in these kind of MSMEs, who could probably also borrow from there. But if you look at the specific question you asked for unsecured financing, so again, it also depends how the vintage of the MSMEs, what's the business model, how would he be able to repay the debt. And yeah, to my mind, even unsecured financing is possible if the MSME is good and a potential borrower for any of the bank. So apart from that, there are various initiatives taken by Government of India. There are various schemes also. There are some schemes where banks are also partners. So even Canara Bank has a scheme specifically on behest of Government of India, where MSMEs can borrow. Even Yes Bank has recently announced something of those lines. So I think without naming much of lenders, I think there are various avenues and schemes and people there who know that MSMEs could probably be the next bet, who could become those mid-sized corporates or even large corporates, and they are willing to lend there. So coming to the next question, I think this is for Pankaj. So this is from Neeta Makkar. Neeta is asking that there was a news item today about a huge shortage of shipping containers due to increased exports and reduced imports. So is there an expected impact on container manufacturers, because there's a huge shortage today, and which are the good companies in this sector?
Okay. So thanks. I think I spoke about every opportunity, but I forgot to touch upon the risk which is there looming in the markets today. And it's very important before I answer the question to mention to all of you the risk which are there. First, I think with this inward looking approach globally, and in the last 2 decades, you look at China became the lowest cost producer and exported deflation to the rest of the world. Now with this entire inward looking policy by every country, I think there's a risk of inflation looming large across the globe. And in the last 2-3 months, we have seen across commodities, whether it be soft commodities, whether it be agricultural commodities, whether it be ferrous, non-ferrous metals, we have seen a huge spike up. And over the last 4-5 years, a big theme which has been prevalent is the ESG theme, environmental social governance. And people have invested very little amount in fossil fuels and all that. And suddenly after pandemic, when demand has started to pick up, it's creating a demand supply imbalance. So friends, I think a very, very important risk we should keep in mind in the near term is inflation risk, which is there across the globe with commodities spiking, imbalance being there, and that can lead to interest rates moving higher. And we have already seen in India and in US, the 10-year bond, despite of everything, is started to look up. So that's one risk from an equity market perspective. And coming to the point on the supply chain, I think there's a huge disruption which is happening on the container side. And this is not happening from today for last 3-4 months. And, there's a, disbalance between import and export. And China used to be the largest exporter, and that's not the case right now in the last few months. And as a result, China has hoarded all the containers at their ports, and that leading to a huge shortage of containers globally. Just to give you some numbers, $600 you used to have one container export from China to US, various commodities. That's not even available at $3,000. There's a huge spike up globally on supply chain disruption and freight rates. And that's something to ponder about. In this time's conference call across corporate India, there were about at least 25 companies in India only, which talked about impact on the business because of non-availability of containers and shipping freights going up. And if you speak to any port guys in India, they are saying that port mein bahut maal hai, but shipping ke liye container nahi hai. So I think that's a real risk which is there, which is impacting businesses. The second friend is the semiconductor availability and open cells. What has happened in that Taiwan and Korea used to be the largest exporters of that. And the talk in last 2-3 years started on television industry will decline, log kam television dekhenge. Automobile industry will move from IC engine to EV. And hence people underinvested in or shut down their factories. And suddenly you see a huge automobile surge. You saw TV industry doing extremely well, and so forth. And suddenly there's underinvestment availability of semiconductor chips, for example. And if you go to the transcripts of all the global auto majors or electronic auto majors OEMs, they are complaining of availability of semiconductor chips. And auto industry could see a 15 to 20% decline in production because of non-availability of semiconductor chips. So I think my sense is it's at least a 2-3 quarter phenomena, both the supply chain imbalance and the freight rates. And hopefully over the next 2-3 quarters, we should probably streamline that. But I think this is near-term risk one should keep in mind. both from a cost and inflation perspective. And my sense is it will impact the margins of Indian companies on a gross level going forward.
Thanks, Pankaj. Next question is from Rohit Tulsan. I think, Rajiv bhai, this is something which you can answer. So how will be the growth trajectory of direct tax and GST in the next 3 to 5 years?
So tax is the tail, business is the dog. So tail will never, wag the dog will wag the tail. So if the business is looking up, the taxes will look up as well. So as the business grows, the tax collection or the tax payments will increase because the percentage of GST is not going to change. Your turnover increases, the GST collections will increase. And of course, the government is doing all that it can do to make sure that the right amount of taxes are getting paid, and whatever leakages or loopholes were there, they are being plugged. So in that sense, there will be a better level of compliance. And as the business grows, obviously the tax growth will be robust.
Sure. I hope that answers Rohit's question. We have the next one coming in from Neeta. So Neeta is asking, renewable energy sector, which are companies which have good growth prospect. So I think, Neeta, I don't think so Pankaj would want to name those companies, but maybe he can throw some light on renewable energy as a sector and maybe something a little more on the same, please.
Yeah, I think there's a big change happening globally where Paris climate change, countries have signed to that. And I think renewal is becoming an important part. Globally, fossil fuels, and many countries probably in the next 3-5 years probably will have zero thermal plants operating in their country. And we have seen already some countries in Europe doing that. So I think it's a very welcome change that globally people are thinking about climate change. And I can tell you, you just have to look around the world. There are companies in US, Europe, which are into wind, which are into solar, which are into batteries, which is energy storage. And they are commanding huge market caps just because the ESG as a concept is attracting trillions of dollars globally. And that money is going into environmental friendly company, socially active companies, well-governed companies. And I think that's a new change globally we are seeing in this investment world. And renewables is an important focus. In India, we have seen few companies doing very good job there. And anything to do with clean and green energy, I think will be the focus by global investors across the world. But I think it's a very, very important theme. I forgot to mention in my theme part, but clean and green energy is a very important part, and renewables form a very substantial portion to it.
Thanks so much, Pankaj.
In fact, if I can just add to that, the demand for ready projects, people who don't want to come and invest into greenfield projects, because that comes in, and any renewable energy project would require a large land bank also, whether you want to set up wind turbines, whether you want to set up a solar a park, you require large land banks, and there is a gestation period. So today there are very few projects available in India, and there is a huge amount of capital chasing it. So the valuations are kind of crazy. So the bottom line is that is an area in demand, and one way or the other that is going to increase. And the other area that we have seen developing is all the companies have given a target of say 2030 or 2050 of going carbon neutral. Now, carbon neutral, you can either go by generating the, replacing your fossil energy by renewable energy, or the other way is to generate and get carbon credits. So we are seeing a lot of action in the nature-based solutions also, wherein people are trying to create those carbon credits so that they can offset it against their existing carbon emissions that they are creating. Therefore, they can get carbon neutral faster. And yet another trend that we are seeing globally and even coming to India is carbon neutral fuel getting sold. So what companies are doing, the fossil fuel which is being sold they are already offsetting the carbon against that. So the carbon credit is being offset against the fuel. And you as a company, if you want to run a carbon neutral fuel, you can buy carbon neutral fuel from companies which are willing to sell that. So these are trends which you will see. So not only a standard when you talk of renewables, a solar or a wind, but these are associated trends that you will see in this area, which will lead to a growth of renewable energy and also to offsetting a lot of these impact and get companies getting to carbon neutrality.
And also just to add, Jalpesh bhai, there's the next big trend globally is being talked about is green hydrogen. And I think that's something which is very, very important. And in our budget speech, if you read again, FM mentioned about hydrogen and green hydrogen as an important fuel source going forward for our energy demands in the country itself. So I think this will be a very, very important area to watch out. Globally, companies are committing huge amount of capital towards this green hydrogen path. And I think that's something which we should keep in mind from a renewal perspective.
Okay, sure. So even India also has seen some companies doing that, or we are yet to see players?
We have started already companies talking about.
Okay.
We were there with a couple of companies in the last week. They are leaders in capital goods sector, and already they are talking about electrolyzers, which goes into green hydrogen, and fuel cells being a part of that. So I think people have started making a move. It's not a thing which will happen in next 6 to 12 months. Sure. But if you look at this decade, I think slowly and gradually you will hear a lot more about green hydrogen and hydrogen as a fuel cell going forward to meet our energy demands.
Sure, that's a very good news to hear. So I think there's a few more questions, but I'll just take the last one because of the paucity of time. So this is quite interesting. So this says that we have seen the commercial, the retail real estate, the residential piece picking up, at least in Mumbai, wherein some cities like Delhi or Bangalore are not doing that well. And also, what is the view on the commercial real estate because of a lot of offices vacating the rental spaces? Yeah.
So on Resi, I think when I look at the micro markets across India, the traction is very good. And the absorption rates, which is inventory absorption, has been faster than the new launches. And in my view, if this run rate continues for another 15 to 18 months, you will see pricing following after that. Today, pricing is not moving. Developers want to get rid of inventory, get the velocity going into their favor. And maybe after 18, 24 months, you will see the launches. So my sense is supply side will be limited. Once the ready inventory starts getting absorbed, you will see pricing follow. And across micro markets, I'm seeing pickup in inventory, whether it be Delhi, NCR, Bangalore, IT is doing extremely well. So you are seeing huge demand from the IT sector. Pune is doing extremely well. I was told in Gujarat, whatever you sold in 2 years, you sold in 9 months, in Ahmedabad and around regions. So I'm seeing that, and especially Mumbai got a boost, Maharashtra, because of the stamp duty cut, right? This has not happened rest of the country, but I am sure that other states will also follow the suit, because now every state wants to copy and get the growth orientation done. So I think that's something which is clear, that residential is probably showing signs of life. On commercial, yes, probably you may see a stagnation for some time as people adjust to the new norm and the new reality of working from home. But when I look at the demand, if the FDI comes into the country, office space is needed. And when we talk to large builders and developers who own the commercial real estate, at least one thing is clear, that REIT and InvIT has become a new platform for them to monetize it. And it's a very big change. Let's not forget, earlier, people used to develop just being on their own rental. Now you can, at a lower cap rate, monetize that asset and make it a platform that new assets can be a part of that platform. And from a demand side, I think India would next become the data center hub globally. We have not seen data centers being there in India. 2 giga or 3 gigawatts of data center is there. My sense is next 2, 3, 4 years, we will see at least 10 to 15 gigawatts of data center being developed in India. as the noise for data privacy becomes more louder in India, you will see global majors having data centers in India. And that will also make sure that the need for office space grows. So maybe not to the extent of residential, but I don't buy that point that commercial will dip very badly and things are very bad. Finally, we all have realized in 12 months that we need that social fabric. Office jana hai. Well, everybody has now started missing the office ki hafta mein 3 din hi jaye, but office to jana hai, logo se baat karna hai. So I think it is not going to finish off, but yes, obviously it will be much slower than residential side.
Sure. I'll just take last one. So I think this is from Mohammed.
Sorry, Jalpesh, just a couple of points on that. Again, residential, one of the things from a tax perspective that we saw, in order to help the builders offload their built up stock, because we had a huge inventory which was lying. And in some cities, the stamp duty value was higher than the real value at which they could sell. So what the government did is they gave a 20% kind of a rebate, because otherwise your stamp duty value is deemed to be the value at which you have sold or purchased, and there is a tax implication around it. So many deals could not take place because of this problem, because people were not willing to get into that tax exposure. So the government relaxed it by 20%. So even if your actual deal value is up to 20% lower of the stamp value, then the deals could go through. So that allowed the builders to reduce their prices actually and go out and sell that. So that was one facilitation that was done. And again, on the commercial real estate space, the action that we see is perhaps the centralized large offices that we used to see. You may see more decentralized or shared workspaces, but total workspace requirement will not dip. And as investors come in, as more business grows, obviously, earlier you may have expected it to grow by 50%, it may grow at a slower rate, but with more people coming in, more offices needed, it is not that the commercial real estate is dead.
Understood. Sure, Rajiv bhai. Thanks so much for the views. So the last one before we end is from Mohammad Adil Hussain. He's saying, we are a home healthcare company where products range from a simple doctor visit to creating ICU at home. Currently, because of COVID, there is a huge demand of such services, and we have increased our presence in 4 metro cities, with 2 more coming up next financial year. It's the 5th year of operations, and we are looking to raise around 200 crores in funding. What should be our strategy when we want to attract such kind of investment? So I think since Parimal bhai, you are there and IBF has been advising companies, would you want to take this up?
Yeah, this space, the healthcare space, is very, very interesting space. A lot of interest, investors' interest is happening in this space, and I personally believe if the business plan is quite viable, investors will definitely invest. 200 crore investment is not a big thing. We have a lot of investors, PEs lined up who are looking at healthcare space. Specific focused funds are also there. We can approach those funds and we'll be able to raise this 200 crores. But the viability needs to be analyzed, understood, and then we can take it forward.
Yeah. So what I request, Mohammad Adil, you can probably drop in a mail at connect@ivf.in, and maybe from there, Parimal bhai would invite you to one of our sessions, which we keep having every Saturdays, where the panel of mentors engage with businesses like yours and advise what's to be done further. So I repeat that, it's called connect@ibaf.in. Thanks. So I think with this, we come to the end of the session. Had a very fantastic time, Pankaj, Rajiv. I'm sure everyone has thoroughly enjoyed the same. And I think with this, we begin the great series of Zaverian Masterminds. And I'm quite proud that we started that with you, Pankaj, and with you, Rajiv, because I think going forward, we will have many more sessions to come. So before I end, may I request Dr. Sanjay Goel, Secretary West Zone, St. Xavier's College, Calcutta Alumni Association, to give a vote of thanks, and maybe we will move ahead and have a great Sunday thereafter. Thanks everyone from my end.
Thank you.
Welcome, Sanjay bhai.
Jalpesh bhai, thank you so much. I think they need to start the video. They were just saving on the bandwidth.
1 second. I think
I need to see myself also here.
We want to see you guys more in person. Actually, the last meet which we had at RA Colony, I think thereafter we had one at Andheri on the budget session. I think Pankaj, Rajiv, we had Sanjeev, all of us. So I think we should try to do it more physically. I think we thought we should do physically, and then there's a second wave which has come in Mumbai. So I think very soon we would do a physical session as well. So over to you, Sanjay bhai.
Yeah, thank you. Happy Sunday to everybody. And as a convent, we have seen that we have been advised visit a temple or a church on a Sunday, and luckily we have been able to visit the Temple of Knowledge today, thanks to the initiative taken by Jalpesh, Abhishek Kalyani, Mir, and support by Pankaj bhai and Rajiv bhai, along with so many other attendees here. I would like to just go back a little bit into history. Today, we are 15-year-old chapter in West Zone. We started in 2006. With an objective of connecting every Zaverian globally. And I am glad that we have taken a step today where most of the chapters have supported us and many of the members from there have connected on this Zoom call. So we are a global event today, and I must congratulate every one of us so that we could go far, and this is the beginning. And I would like to thank for this our visionary president, Reverend Father Dominic Savio, for his vision has been this, that we should connect with everybody and we should support everybody, and every Zaverian should prosper together. So for that, and I would like to support our alumni secretary at Calcutta, Sanjeev Ponar, for his wholehearted support for every effort that we have done. Definitely our today's moderator, Jalpesh bhai. He has been a rock solid pillar for every event that we have done. Abhishek has been there, though silently, but he has been working very significantly on every event. Mihir is there. Mihir has been supporting us. Ashika is there. They have supported whichever way they have. Pankaj bhai and Rajiv bhai, no words to thank. You had been totally enlightening. Like last year, Pankaj bhai gave me so many insights, not only me, to every Zaverian who was there. And we could see many of the industries in a different light, that how the industry is going to perform and the economy is going to perform. Then I would like to thank NMCBI, that is Navi Mumbai Chamber of Business and Industry, where I am the Vice Chairman, and Indian Business Advisory Forum, and all of you who have attended today. And this is the beginning, and I can assure you, friends, that we look forward to inviting many other luminaries in the Zaverians, like Mr. Harsh Goenka, Gopalda, like R. Gopalakrishnan, Goenka ji of Imami Group, Lakshmi Mittal ji, Sandeep Patel ji, who is heading IBM India, and many, many more. Like Shashi Tharoor is also missed out by Jalpesh. He is quite a good speaker, and I'm sure that I will be able to bring him for one of the sessions where we can be enlightened by his wonderful use of language and the knowledge that he possesses. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today and making it a worthwhile, memorable event. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Have a great Sunday. Thank you. Thank you
so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Pankaj.